deeper thing though.
And we are live.
Live
Sound minds. The synchronicity of this three, huh? Yo, so listen here. I'm gonna be very candid with you. Jane Elliott is on her way. She was at home, but Wi-Fi issues, as we know, man, technology is never perfect. So she's actually driving, probably doing about 108 down the highway to get to a more Wi-Fi area. So she's fast and furious and just to get to the Sound Mind podcast. But nonetheless, she said she's gonna be with us. So I guess the cat's out the bag, right? So today we have Jane Elliott as a guest. Jane Elliott is a phenomenal human being phenomenal human being who stepped out a lot of supposed pockets she probably was expected to be in at the time and exhibited an exercise that kind of changed and altered a lot of ways of thinking in regards to racism and hate, whereas she was proving hate is actually taught. A lot of people sit there and be like, nah, hate is not taught. If you from a different, culture or so on and so forth, you're just born with it, or other people have their theories and philosophies. But with these exercises and exhibitions, she showed that hate is actually taught. So today we're going to have Mrs. Jane Elliott, who is incredibly young looking for her incredible age. She looks like she's 19. You know what I mean? So when you see her, you're going to see how, but her mind is that of a elder that we need to listen to. And this is why she's going to be with us today. So we're going to show a video while she's on her way here. We're going to show a video so that y'all can get a little bit more acclimated to who Jane Elliott is if you don't know, or just to jog your memory if you forgot. You know what I mean? So
yes. Jog your memory. It's crazy because as I was, promoting and telling people about it, not that many people they've heard about it, they heard about this exercise, but it's like something that they forgot about. So to refresh your memory, let's pull the blue eyes, brown eyes exercise. One of the first tapings of this exercise was done at her third grade class. So let's check this out and see and catch up on this. I mean, once again, one of the comments say she was ahead of her time. So that's what we're definitely going to be seeing and talking about. So check this out.
Week. Does anybody know what it is?
National Brotherhood.
National Brotherhood Week. What's brotherhood? Treat everyone as though he was your brother. And is there anyone in this United States that we do not treat as our brothers?
Yes.
Who?
Yeah.
The black people. Who else?
Indians.
Absolutely, the Indians. Many places in the United States. How are black people treated? How are Indians treated? How are people who are of a different color than we are treated?
They don't get anything in this world.
Why is that?
Because they're different color.
You think you know how that would feel to be judged by the color of your skin? Do you think you do? No, I don't think you'd know how that felt unless you had been through it, would you? It might be interesting to judge people today by the color of their eyes. Would you like to try this?
Yeah.
Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Since I'm the teacher and I have blue eyes, I think maybe the blue-eyed people should be on top the first day. I mean, the blue-eyed people are the better people in this room. Oh, yes, they are.
Yeah.
Blue-eyed people are smarter than brown-eyed people. This is a fact. The brown-eyed people do not get to use the drinking fountain. You'll have to use the paper cups. You brown-eyed people are not to play with the blue-eyed people on the playground. Well, the brown-eyed people in this room today are going to wear collars so that we can tell from a distance what color your eyes are. You ready, Laurie?
Brown-eyed.
She's a brown-eyed. You'll begin to notice today that we spend a great deal of time waiting for brown-eyed people. I don't see the yardstick, do you?
It's coming over there. Hey, Miss Knight, you better keep that on your desk when the brown-eyed people get out of hand.
Oh, you think if the brown-eyed people get out of hand, that would be the thing to use. Who goes first to lunch? The blue-eyed people. Blue-eyed people may go back for seconds. Brown-eyed people do not.
Brown-eyed.
Don't you know?
They're not smart. And it seemed like when we were down on the bottom, everything bad was happening to us.
The way they treated you, you felt like you didn't even want to try to do anything.
It seemed like Mrs. Elliott was taking our best friends away from us.
What happened at recess? Were two of you boys fighting?
Russell called me names and I hit him in the gut.
What did he call you?
Brown eyes. They always call us that. Yeah, they keep calling us brown eyes.
What's wrong with being called brown eyes?
It means that we're stupider.
I watched what had been marvelous, cooperative, wonderful, thoughtful children turn into nasty, vicious, discriminating little third graders in a space of 15 minutes. Yesterday, I told you that brown-eyed people aren't as good as blue-eyed people. That wasn't true. I lied to you yesterday. The truth is that brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. Russell, where are your glasses?
I forgot them.
You forgot them. And what color are your eyes?
Blue.
Susan Ginder has brown eyes. She didn't forget her glasses.
Yeah.
Russell Ring has blue eyes, and what about his glasses?
He forgot them.
He forgot them. Yesterday we were visiting, and Greg said, "Boy, I like to hit my little sister as hard as I can. That's fun." What does that tell you about blue-eyed people?
They're naughty.
The brown-eyed people may take off their collars, and each of you may put your collar on a blue-eyed person. The brown-eyed people get 5 extra minutes of recess. You blue-eyed people are not allowed to be on the playground equipment. You blue-eyed people are not to play with the brown-eyed people. Brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. They're smarter than blue-eyed people. And if you don't believe it, look at Brian. I use Orton Gillingham Phonics. We use the card pack. The brown-eyed children were in the low class the first day, and it took them 5.5 minutes to get through the card pack. The second day, it took them 2.5 minutes. The only thing that had changed was the fact that now they were superior people. You went faster than I've ever had anyone go through the card pack. Why couldn't you get them yesterday?
We had those collars on.
You think the collars kept you?
just keep thinking about those collars.
Oh, and you couldn't think as well with the collars on. 4 minutes and 18 seconds. How long did it take you yesterday?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. How long did it take you today?
4 minutes and 18 seconds.
What happened?
One down.
What were you thinking of?
This.
I hate today.
I need to. I hate to.
Because I'm blue-eyed.
See, I am too.
There's nothing, it's not funny, it's not fun, it's not pleasant. This is a filthy, nasty word called discrimination. We're treating people a certain way because they are different from the rest of us. Is that fair?
No.
Nothing fair about it. We didn't say this was going to be a fair day, did we?
No.
And it isn't. It's a horrid day. Okay, you ready? What did you people who are wearing blue collars now find out today?
I know what they felt like yesterday. I did too.
How did they feel yesterday?
Down. Like a dog on a leash. Yeah. Like you're chaining up in the prison. Like you're shut up and you're throwing the key away.
Should the color of some other person's eyes have anything to do with how you treat them?
No.
All right, then should the color of their skin?
No.
Should you judge people
No.
by the color of their skin?
No.
When you see a black man or an Indian or someone walking down the street, are you going to say, look at that silly looking thing?
No.
Does it make any difference whether their skin is black or white?
No.
Or yellow?
No.
Or red?
No.
Is that how you decide whether people are good or bad?
No.
Is that what makes people good or bad?
No.
Now you know a little bit more than you knew at the beginning of this week?
Yeah.
Okay, now are you back?
Yeah.
That feel better?
Yeah.
Does the color of eyes that you have make any difference in the kind of person you are?
So,
Gotta give a round of applause. Gotta give a round of applause.
without further ado, and this is not just because you're in front of us, Mrs. Jane Elliott, Superwoman with and without the cape on, Mrs. Jane Elliott is in the building. And I want to, so we brought you on today so that you could promote your mixtape. I know that you're dropping the mixtape very soon. Mrs. Jane Elliott, you are by far, and this is no disrespect to any guest that we ever had, one of the most powerful guests that we have ever had, just based off of your bravery, based off of your work.
Wait a minute. Have you had any black women on?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, well then,
we definitely have.
Those women are braver than I will ever be to raise children in the United States of America, and then to call a white woman brave in view of what they have to put up with every day, and they have to send their kids to schools that treat them pretty much the way I treated blue-eyed kids the day they were on the bottom, unless I'm very much mistaken. And I've been a teacher for years, and I know what happens in schools. I know what kind of social studies we teach. I know that we teach that Christopher Columbus discovered America. I know that we teach that the Indians crawled up out of the ground, not that they came from Africa, which is where they came from. I know that we lie in the public, private, and parochial schools in this country on a daily basis. And if you think those schools are bad, wait until you see what happens in charter schools.
Wow.
That's even more terrifying than what's happening in the public schools. Now, what were you going to say before I so rudely interrupted you?
I just wanted to say, no, please, no. 25 seconds in. And I just wanted to say
25 seconds in, and when you hear this sound, you've just heard a gem.
I want to say that I've never been corrected so pleasantly, and I've never been told the truth so pleasantly. The fact that you already speaking in those terms, this is the reason. So I'm going to give a little backdrop. I reached out to you and you said, yeah, I don't know if I'm fit to do it.
No.
And then I told you, I invited you out to dance with me so that we could make America reflect on this reality. And here we are.
I was afraid you were going to say great again. I was afraid you were going to say great again. And I was going to go on.
Yeah, no. And so fitting it is, we are on the cusp. We are a week away from America's supposed birthday, right? So only then can we be as real and honest as we can be. And I already see that you're already on that wave, to be honest. And we are going to so enjoy this episode. You're right. We have had people of color on here who have definitely had to deal with other things, much more, probably more effective or effective as you probably have. But the fact that you have being a Caucasian woman who has stepped out and has let it be known.
Never call me Caucasian. Never call me Caucasian. Never use that word again, because that's about people from Western and Southern Europe. As if people evolved there. They didn't come from there. If they had started in the Caucasus Mountain region, they wouldn't have lived through the first winter. Those were Africans. Those were Africans who came to the Caucasus Mountains. Those were Africans who peopled every landmass on the face of the earth about between 200,000 and 300,000 years ago. No, between 20,000 and 10,000 years ago, they came to this continent. So let's get rid of the word Caucasian, because we aren't. That's what, when we say Caucasian, we use that so that we don't have to admit that we all came from Africa. We are all Afro-Americans. That is the way it is. Get used to it, people. Anyway, go ahead. What were you about to say? Go ahead.
I was going to say you're amazing. And
well, that's one word that I'll put up with, but I won't put up with Caucasian, and I won't put up with biracial. You cannot be biracial unless one of your parents came from outer space. Now, in the case of Donald Trump, that could be possible, but for the rest of us, now I'm sorry, I swore I'd never use his name again. Donosaurus T. Rump may have come from outer space. The rest of us originated in Africa, every single one of us, you and I, every one of you are my 30th to 50th cousins. That's the way it is. Get used to it. And if you, my next family reunion, I'm inviting you folks. And if you don't show up, I'm going to say, well, you're just racist. You don't want to come to my house. How do you like that?
So let's just get into it, Ms. Jane.
Yes.
Why do you believe racism was created?
Because it was a superior being created the human race. Let us survive. Human beings deliberately created racism during the Spanish Inquisition. During the Spanish Inquisition, Torquemada and company were trying to turn everybody into Catholics. So they killed everybody that they thought probably wasn't a Catholic. They realized suddenly they killed a whole bunch of people who were Christians, and they didn't want to do that. So then they decided you couldn't tell what somebody's religion was by the way they looked. So they decided they had to find another way to identify those who probably weren't Christian. And they set upon skin color. And they started to call us white and black. Now, white and black are polar opposites. White is, and look in the dictionary, white is the color of goodness and purity. I'm good and pure. Black is the color of savagery and evil. You're all savage and evil. People, take a look at this. I am not white, and I resent being called white. My shirt is white, my hair is white, my skin is brown. This is not white. I can look at you, gentlemen, and see that some of you have black hair, but I can see where your hair stops and your skin begins, because your skin isn't the color of this iPad case. It's time for us to start being realistic about skin color. We are all shades of brown, folks, but as long as you use two polar opposites to describe people, you will separate us indefinitely until you change the vocabulary. Now you're going to say words aren't that important. If they weren't that important, white people wouldn't be so angry about me telling them they aren't white. And young black people who are saying Black Lives Matter wouldn't be so angry about me saying, look, you're not black, get over it. Black lives matter, African lives matter, because we are all part African. If we would all get our DNA done and trace it back far enough, we would find that a percentage of our DNA came from a country in Africa. Get over it, and get over it now. And then somebody's going to say, what about the Garden of Eden? I'm going to say, let's talk about the Garden of Eden. God, according to the Garden of Eden, picked up dirt in the Garden of Eden. Dirt in the Garden of Eden has to have been very dark brown or black, because it was made out of rotted palm fronds. When vegetation rots, it turns very, very dark brown or black. Realize that. I was raised on a farm. I know these things. Eve was made out of Adam's rib. All bone tissue is white because it's made out of calcium. So obviously, according to the biblical story of the Garden of Eden, the first couple was made by God in the Garden of Eden, by God, a dark man and a white woman. Now, shall we talk about miscegenation? Shall we talk about laws against it? It is totally ridiculous. If you're going to use the Bible, you have to realize that Jesus, according to the Bible, had feet of bronze and kinky woolly hair. And now they've decided that he was an Ethiopian Jew. Have you seen in person from Ethiopia lately? They ain't white. They do not look like the pictures you have of Jesus Christ hanging all over the place. People, the idea of black and white started in the 14th and early 15th century. If you folks, anybody watching this, decide to continue to use the words from the 14th and 15th century, then you must also use the means of transportation and communication that they used at that time. And all of you men will have to wear knee breeches and powdered wigs. Now, you guys who have much hair by design are going to be really uncomfortable in powdered wigs. You're going to scratch a lot, and you're going to say to yourselves, I don't want to live in the 15th century. Please bring me back to where all those ignorant white people, racist people are, and let me teach them, train them to believe that they ain't racist, they ain't white, and I ain't black. Now, this is a tough lesson for Sunday afternoon. I'm sorry, but I didn't go to church this morning, so I haven't had my proper education for the day. Did I answer your question, or did you ask one?
Gems on top of gems.
I think you answered a lot of questions. I think you answered questions I didn't even have yet.
Of course you did.
and we're getting to those.
Can we take it back? Can we take it back to 1968? You know, us watching this video. this is the beginning. We would, from what I can see, it's like the beginning of your legacy. What of the the blue eyes, brown eye exercise, like that is a continued conversation to this day. Did you have foresight of this becoming, this your
No,
legacy of becoming your legacy? And
no.
who was Jane Elliott before this exercise started?
I was Jane Elliott, who had been born and raised in that community, which is the only reason I got away with what I did. Born of a Catholic mother, a casual Catholic mother, and a Baptist father who believed absolutely that there was something better, who would say to us, the difference between right and wrong. Now do the right thing, goddammit. And you'd think, well, you just swore, Dad. That's not right. And he'd say, do the right thing, goddammit. And he meant, by God, you better do the right thing. And we knew that we better do the right thing when we were doing something that he was going to find out about. He used to say to us, that particularly after we became the girls became teenagers, I don't want any pickaninnies in my house as grandchildren. And then Martin Luther King Jr., my husband and I lived in Waterloo, Iowa for a number of years, and he ran a grocery store for the National Tea Company in the north end of town, which was the black section. And we found out there that all the things that we had been told about black people were absolutely untrue. Most of his customers were black, and the only person who stole from him on a regular basis was the federal meat inspector. And Daryl didn't dare stop him because then his meat case wouldn't pass inspection. But we learned about Daryl had some fine friends in Waterloo, but then he was only allowed to have one black employee for National Tea. Well, Jim Jackson quit the store, and decided to go to college. So Daryl didn't have a black employee. So the head of the NAACP in Waterloo, Iowa, came in and said to Daryl, we're going to pick at your store. He said, why? She said, you don't have any black employees. Bring me a black employee. She said, no, I don't want to. We want to pick at your store. So she picketed his store. She thought that was a clever thing to do. Daryl was disgusted. I was laughing because I thought, how long did you think you were going to go on this way, Daryl? You're going to have to get more than one. You better get them, and you better get them pretty soon. But instead of him getting any more black employees, National Tea closed the store to punish the black people who picketed. So they built a new store across town, across the river, on the south side of the street. Absolutely the worst thing they could have done, because black people didn't go across town to go to that store. So the store went bust. Daryl lost his job. We moved back to Riceville. My daughter quit teaching. I applied for her job. The superintendent said, if we lose one Jennison, that was our last name, if we lose one Jennison, we'll be all right if we get another one. He had no idea what he was getting. He thought he was getting another Mary. He didn't get a Mary. He got a Jane. And I didn't teach the way Mary did, because I had been taught that whoever it was said, we learn by doing. John Dewey said, we learn by doing. And I believed in active learning. So we were doing something exciting all the time, every day. And I had good superintendents and good principals there. Principals and superintendents are flack catchers. They catch the flack from what happens as a result of teachers doing things that are not really expected in classrooms in small towns. They caught a lot of flack where I was concerned, but they never brought it to me. And Martin Luther King was one of our heroes of the month in February, along with, unfortunately, George Washington, who owned slaves, bought and sold people for money, Abraham Lincoln, who was our first black president. He was a Melungeon. He was part black, part white, and part Cherokee Indian. And we don't teach that in the schools in this country because we don't want to admit that. But I think it's highly amusing that the Republican Party has as their standard bearer the party of Lincoln. It's the party of Lincoln. If they hear this, and most of them won't be listening to this, but if they would, they will change the name of their party, because they're going to change it anyway. Hey, if you have a man who behaved the way our former president did, you need to realize that he knocked the L out of Republican because of his behavior where women were concerned. We were going to learn about those heroes of the month: Abraham Lincoln, Daniel Boone, who was famous for killing Native Americans and taking over their land, and Davy Crockett, who died while we were trying to take over part of Mexico. I taught the same things everybody else taught about those people. I should not have taught them as heroes. And we should not teach the Crusades as a heroic endeavor. 300 years spent killing people, killing. You're making an awful ring in my ear. I want you to know that. Anyway, they spent 300 years killing people in order to bring them to Jesus. Now, wait a minute. I wonder how Jesus felt about that. Thou shalt not kill. Well, so we were going to put up the teepee the next morning. We're studying the Indian unit. I took the teepee home that night to wash it and dry it and iron it. And as I walked in the back door, the telephone was ringing. I answered the telephone. It was my sister. She said, "Is your television on?" I said, "No." She said, "Better turn it on." Why? Because they shot him. I said, "Who do we shoot this time?" Because we had already shot a whole lot of important people, I thought. And she said, "Martin Luther King Jr." And then everything stopped. My world stopped spinning for a few minutes. I swear to you, the world stopped spinning. And I thought, no, this can't be right. We couldn't be that stupid. I was wrong. We were. So I turned on the television, and there it was, that horror on television. So I got the kids fed. I got them to bed. I washed and dried the teepee. I spread it out on the living room floor. I was watching Walter Cronkite. Oh, God, I wish I didn't have to remember this. It makes me sick to my stomach. I was watching Walter Cronkite as he interviewed 3 leaders of the black community, and he said to those black men, "When our leader was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line?" I thought, my God, did he actually say that? When our leader was killed, was JFK the leader only of white people? His widow held us together. See how civilized we are? Who's going to keep your people in line? Now, right until that minute, I thought that black people were my people. I thought we were all part of the family of man. Like a fool, I believed what was in the Bible, some of it at least. I was shocked that he would say that. So I changed the channel, and there sat Dan Rather saying to 2 black men, "Don't you Negroes think you should feel sympathy for us white people because we can't feel the anger at this killing that you Negroes can?" At that point, I rolled that teepee up. I threw it into the bottom of the closet. I turned off the television. I got my husband supper. He worked at a industrial plant at that time and drove back and forth to work every day with a bunch of men out of the community. He came in the door and he said, "They shot him." And I said, "Yes." He said, "What are they going to do?" And I was crying, and he was trying to keep me from crying. I said, "I'm going to do exactly what Hitler did. I'm going to separate my students according to their color of their eyes tomorrow and give some of my students the chance to find out how it feels to be something other than white in this country." He said, "Jen, you'll lose your job." I said, "If I lose my job for doing what's right, I don't care that I'm losing my job." He said, "Who's going to feed these kids? We need that job." I said, "I cannot allow this to go on. I cannot allow this to happen. If I'm an educator, I have to lead people out of ignorance. That's my job. That's what my title means. And that's what I'm going to do tomorrow." He said, "You have no idea what you're getting into. I ride back and forth with these guys every day." He said, "You need to realize what's going to happen." I said, "Daryl, I'm going to do this exercise because what happens with those 3rd graders is more important than what happens to our children. We can take care of our children. Who's going to teach those 3rd graders?" He said, "Well, you're going to be sorry." So he went to bed, he ate supper, and he went to bed, and I cleaned it up, and I went to bed. I said the only prayer I was saying at that time, "Oh, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Oh, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace." I only said that much of it. If I had known what was going to happen in the ensuing weeks, I probably wouldn't have said that. I probably would have said, "Forgive me, God, if I don't do the right thing," and gone to sleep and decided not to do the exercise. But I didn't do that. I got up the next morning, got ready to go to school. As I walked out the door, he said, "You aren't going to do that thing." I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, I'll see you tonight. Good luck." And I said, "Okay." And I went to school, and first one in the room, Stephen Armstrong, came in and said, "Hey, Elliott, they shot that king last night. Why did they shoot that king?" I said, "We're going to talk about that, Stephen." So after we finished doing the things you have to do first thing in the morning, including saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag with the words "under God" in it, which do not belong there, which were not there until Dwight Eisenhower was president of the United States, and the Knights of Columbus lobbied their congressmen to get the words "under God" inserted into the pledge, thereby making it into a little prayer that every child has to stand up in the morning, put their hand over their hearts, and say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag with the words "under God" in it. Now, I know a lot of people who do not name the superior being God. That's not the name they have for a superior being. And I know a lot of people who don't believe there is a superior being. We have no business leaving those 2 words in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. If we're ever going to go back to separation of church and state, we'll take those words out of there. But more and more, because of Fox News, and you really shouldn't use that word, an unaccented O sound, which would be if we're going to continue to use those, if we're going to use the words "under God" in the pledge, then we might as well give up on separation of church and state, because we don't have that anymore. And it's absolutely essential that we separate church and state in this country. we started, the kids came in, we said the pledge, we did our things. I said, now, how do you feel about what happened last night? And they all knew that he'd been killed. I said, what do you people know, you kids know about black people? They knew every negative stereotype that I have ever heard and some that I had never heard of. And I finally said, how do you kids know these things are true? And that year and every year, those kids said, because my dad said so. And I thought, that's it. I can't teach their fathers, but their kids can teach their fathers. So I said, would you like to do something today that would help you to know how it feels to be other than white in this country? Yeah. It was like, we do lots of fun things here. This is going to be fun too. And I thought, no, it's not. But if that's what you want, my dears, that's what we're going to get. So I separated them according to the color of their eyes. And since I'm blue-eyed and I was the authority figure in the room, I had to be on the bottom the first day. Well, the brown-eyed people were on the top, the blue-eyed people were on the bottom. And immediately after I sent those blue-eyed kids to the back, take their desk to the back of the room, brown-eyed kids to the front, come to the front, I said, no, blue-eyed people aren't as smart as brown-eyed people. They aren't as clean as brown-eyed people. They aren't as civilized as brown-eyed people. And at that point, little Debbie sitting in the front row looked up at me and said, how come you're the teacher here if you got them blue eyes? And I thought, well, you little shit. And I thought, you little shit. Now, I know I shouldn't have, but that's what I thought. And then I thought, well, fool, what did you expect to happen? You told her how to discriminate. You gave her the color to discriminate against, and she doesn't see you now as the teacher. She sees you as just another ignorant bluey. I was shocked and amazed, and shake your finger at me, because that's exactly what she was doing. But she was getting even for anything I had ever said to her that she didn't like, and she let me have it. And then Alan Moss, blue-eyed Alan Moss, in the back row, stood up and said, Debbie, if she didn't have them blue eyes, she'd be the principal of the superintendent. They're both brown-eyed. And I thought, oh, good Lord, there he is. There's our, and at that time, Clarence Thomas wasn't in there, but now I think there's our Clarence Thomas. I'll go along to get along, but I'll also be on your side at the same time. It was just absolutely terrifying. I found out how it feels to be treated other than right, other than fairly, other than as an equal human being in that moment, and other than as the authority figure in the room. Those kids made their decisions about how they were going to treat me, on how they were going to treat other people based on the color of their eyes. And I watched those kids become me. I found out how I look to people of color on a daily basis. And it made me sick. And I decided this will never happen in my presence again. I've got to go through this today, and then I'm going to reverse this on Monday, because this was Friday. I'm going to reverse this on Monday. And on Monday, I'm going to be on top as a bluey. And I'm going to have to show these kids what blueys do when they get on top. And I'm going to have to see to it that I do not increase the ugly feelings about black people by being totally unkind to the brownies when I'm on top, because that is the major fear in the United States of America right now. White people, and I resent having to use the word white. You see, if you don't have enough iron in your body to keep you healthy, you're called anemic. If you don't have enough melanin in your skin to protect yourselves from the damaging rays of the sun, you ought to be called melanemic. So instead of white, I want to use melanemic, because it's a perfectly logical thing to say. Wow. There's nothing negative or positive about it. It is a description of your skin tone because of the sun. If you have more melanin in your skin, you should be called melanaceous, which rhymes with gracious and efficacious and spacious. Isn't that wonderful? Melanaceous. And if you have a lot of melanin in your skin,
bars, yo. Bars.
And if you have a lot of melanin in your skin, you should be called melanotic, which rhymes with exotic. So come on, people, let's stop using white and black, because white is the color of evil, of goodness, and black is the color of evil. Let's stop using those two words. Let's come into the 21st century. I watched kids who couldn't read. I had 4 dyslexic boys, all 4 brown-eyed in my class that year. They couldn't read and they couldn't spell until they had the right color eyes. And on that day, those brown-eyed boys read words I knew they couldn't read and spelled words I knew they couldn't spell. And it happened because of them being treated fairly for one day. Do you know what that tells me about the number of young males of color who don't graduate from high school? I know why they drop out. I know why they don't read. I know why they don't succeed in school, because they are expected not to. They are living down to their teachers' expectations of them, and those expectations go home with them. And when they read their names, when they read the newspaper, it's about the goodness of and the rightness of whiteness and the badness of anything else. I understand what that's all about, and I cannot be a party to that ever again as long as I live. On the other hand, at the end of the day, Billy,
and you've stood on that. Oh, you've definitely stood on that.
I don't just stand on it; I jump up and down on it because I have to kill. I have to kill the idea. I have to kill the idea of the brightness of whiteness because it doesn't exist. On the other hand, I had in my classroom that year Carol, the Lutheran minister's daughter. She came into my room in February, reading at the 6th grade level. She was absolutely brilliant. She hadn't ever multiplied. I taught her how to multiply the first 15 minutes of math class until, and she never made a mistake in multiplication again, until at the beginning of April, she had the wrong color eyes. And on that day, that brilliant child walked with her shoulders hunched as if to ward off an expected blow. She stumbled when she crossed the classroom. She made mistakes in reading. She made mistakes in spelling, and she forgot how to multiply. She came in from recess crying and said, "What's going on here?" As she walked across the playground, 2 brown-eyed Debbies and a brown-eyed Cindy stepped up behind her. One of them reached up, struck her across the back with her forearm, and when Carol turned around, Debbie said to her, "Now you have to apologize to me for getting in my way because I'm better than you are." And Carol apologized, and hey, this sounds insane because it is insane. It happens in this society all day, every day. It's happening now, and it's happening now worse than it did 4 years ago. We are in worse shape now than we were 4 years ago in every way, unless you are a member of the Business Roundtable. You know about the Business Roundtable? 196 mostly males who are millionaires, billionaires, and trillionaires who have gained tremendous amounts of money in the last 4 years because Dinosaur T. Rump said he would make them wealthier than they have ever been. And that is exactly what he has done. And along with it, he has taught people that it's all right to discriminate against those who are of a different shape, a different color, a different gender, a different sexual orientation, a different religion. When he says we're going to, and he did, we're going to keep all these Muslims out of this country, you better know he hadn't better come where I am. I have a daughter who is married to a Muslim from Saudi Arabia, and I have 2 granddaughters who are absolutely beautiful and are 2 of my favorite people on the face of the earth. Let him come into my community and say one word other than goodbye.
Miss Jane, wow, so much to take in.
That was a lot. It was great.
So it's again, you're amazing, not because you're in front of us. I gotta say that one, in interest of what you were saying in regards to God and unification and all that in the pledge, and another kind of like a slide in is money. There is in God we trust behind money, right? So there's that.
But under that, it should say, and everybody else pays cash.
Right. Right. So I just had to point that out, right?
Yeah,
we have been, it is, we have been brainwashed and hypnotized for so many years. I had to ask you in regards to this particular 3rd grade class or anybody that you have done this exercise with, has anybody ever came back probably at an older year or just even at that time and said, "Thank you for teaching me better than what I've been taught"?
Not only kids have as they grew up, but their parents did after it was over. Their parents found, they catch me some way away from Riceville, somewhere nobody was going to see them from Riceville, and they'd say, "Mrs. Elliott, thank you for what you did for my kid. If he hadn't been in your classroom, he would be a different child today, a different man today." And this is interesting because on I think Thursday of this past week, Raymond Hansen, who was in the film The Eye of the Storm, which is the film that was made the 3rd year I did the exercise in my classroom, and I went to Rochester, Minnesota, and I did something like this, and all the people who were asked to come, who were invited to the thing, were lawyers and people who are social workers. And I told them what I'd done and why I do it and what I found out about expectations and what I found out about why a whole lot of people of color are in prison and what I found out about the prison industrial system and what I found out, or not everything that I found out, but a lot of the things I found out in the last few years about the law. And if you haven't read the book, The Color of Law, get the book, The Color of Law, and read it. It will make you absolutely furious when you realize that most of the segregation that is put in place in this country is not de facto segregation, which is people want to be separate from one another. It's de jure segregation. It is put in place by people who write laws who believe in the lie of several different races. People, you and I are all members of the same race. You are my 20th to 30th cousins. And when I said that to this group yesterday, day before yesterday, I think it was Thursday, it was just remarkable what they said at the end of it. One man wrote on his whatever, his computer, I've been going to these classes for 30 years and I've never been at one that was more informative than this. I'll never forget this. Now, this is a lawyer. This is a lawyer. And when you read The Color of Law, you'll realize that he was telling the truth. He learned the same things in school that you and I did. And they've done studies in this country that prove that the longer you stay in school, the more bigoted you become. Because the longer you stay in school, the more you are reinforced in what you learn grades K through 12, most of which in social studies is a frickin' lie and based on a lie. You have to realize that. Teachers don't realize it. They teach what they know. You can't educate people unless you're educated. It's my job. The word educator comes from the root duc dus, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. You can't do that if you're teaching that Christopher Columbus discovered America. He didn't discover America, number one. Number two, this isn't all there is of America. We call the United States of America, America. People, America is everything from the northernmost point of Canada to the southernmost point of South America. All the people in all those countries in North America, Central America, and South America are Americans. We've got to start calling this country the United States of America, because the most important word in that title is the word united. And if you start calling us U.S. America, then you realize that U.S. spells us. And that means all of us. So the next time somebody says, God bless you and God bless America, you say, no. I don't really care that much about Canada and South America and Central America. Well, I'd appreciate it if you'd say, God bless you and God bless the United States of America, because this is where I am allowed to vote. Except that you three gentlemen may not be allowed to vote in the next elections, because we now have a situation in which un-American people are going to change the voting practices in this country, so that a whole lot of people, and the whole lot of people who got Mr. Biden elected, were brown and black women. And you want to remember that the people who saved our democracy last November were people who look like probably your mothers and your grandmothers. And you need to realize that that's what happened, and we have to see to it that they get to vote every year that there's an election that is anybody else is allowed to vote in. So must they be allowed to. This is going to be an extremely interesting next 3 years while we try to figure out how to make sure that everybody's vote gets counted and everybody gets to vote. We are living in the most dangerous times that I have ever lived through in my lifetime. And I lived through the Second World War. I was born in 1933. Terrible thought, isn't it? Well, people are still alive that were born in that year. And that was the year that Franklin Roosevelt and Adolf Hitler came to power. And I watched what Adolf Hitler did, and I listened to my father's reaction to Adolf Hitler for 12 years, from 1933 until 1945. And then here I am in 2020, and here comes a man saying the same things that Adolf Hitler did and putting into practice the same things that Adolf Hitler did, and people voting to put him back in power. No, people, you have to realize that the importance of George Floyd and January 6th is young people who saw both of those things happen because of modern technology, saw those things happen, heard this fool telling these horrendous lies when they are 40, 50, 60 years old, and some other fool rears his ugly head. Those people who watch this are going to remember this, and they're going to say, no, we've been there before. We're not going to go through this again. You're not going to do this in my older years. No, we aren't going to let this happen. Those of us who are my age know what's going on. We have seen it before. We do not want to see it again, but we are seeing it again, and we have to put a stop to it. Educators have to put a stop to it. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I would like to ask another question dovetailing that about education and educators. The example you gave about the students who were dyslexic, and then during the exercise, they found out that they had different abilities. The student who was, you know, the greatest student in the land, and then when she was going through it, found that she was not feeling so great and behaving so great. It reminds me of two studies that were done on the Gollum effect and the Pygmalion effect. And this research is like well documented. There's YouTube videos about it, but they found not only was the behavior of the teacher towards the students, but right when they went through the research and did this over in several different ways, they found out that it was the actual beliefs. So where you had a teacher who actually believed that these students had lower expectations and deserved them, but was pretending for the sake of equality and equity and all these great words that people are saying, if they were pretending, they still had lower performing students, because the students would be sensitive to the microaggressions, the nuances, and so forth, so that it really became important to understand the teacher's actual belief system. And it made me think about how you were educating not only the students, but saying, how do I give parents this, right? If their kids are feeling this viscerally, they're going to be living in this household. But it makes me think, and this is where I'm getting to the question, it makes me think on this podcast, a lot of us agree with each other. In certain rooms where you would be, a lot of people would celebrate you and celebrate us and agree with each other. I hear you. But you know, Martin Luther King talks about the beloved community, and it occurs to me that a lot of times we have beloved micro communities, and that the challenge isn't whether we can have equity and understanding and humor, but how can we expand this to those who we don't have it, especially when we're so comfortable with those who do? Why is it that we can have these studies like the Gollum and Pygmalion effect? Why is it that we can have these micro communities? Why is it that we can have preaching to the choir, and yet we struggle to bring this to everyone, or the critical mass? And what is it we can do to reach those beloved people who fight us? The people who fight us, who
number one,
out of trying to keep it real or whatever, they fight us from making this beloved community a mass reality, not just in these micro groups.
Number one, quit calling them beloved. Somebody who is going to treat people unfairly because of their ignorance about skin color is not beloved. He's be stupid. No, he's not be stupid. He is self-imposed ignorance. Self-imposed ignorance. You can't fix stupid. You can't fix stupid, but you can fix ignorance. And they could read every book that I've read, or what they would like to do is walk up to somebody in color and say, what's it like to be black? And then duck because they're going to get their eyes poked out, and they should. But that's the kind of thing we do. We don't think very deeply about things because we don't have to. If you haven't read the book, Rich Thanks to Racism, get it and read it. The name of the book is Rich Thanks to Racism. And there you will read the chapters about the schools that everybody's crazy about now, charter schools. You'd better read that book and read what charter schools are really doing, and why they're there, and what's happening because of them, and how much money is being made because of them, and how much money the government is putting into them, which isn't going into the public schools. You need to realize that we are creating and once again, we are reinforcing a caste system. And I don't believe that it's a caste system. I think it's a system of self-imposed ignorance and comfort, because white people, melanemic people, can say, well, at least I'm not black. No matter how little they have accomplished, they can say, well, at least I'm not black. And they do it. They say it all the time. They need to read the book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization by Anthony Browder. Have you read it? My God, he says that 4,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, people in the Nile Valley, which the Nile Valley is in Egypt. Egypt is a country in Africa. We've moved it into the Middle East so that people will think all those wonderful things we got from Egyptians came from the Middle East. No, they didn't. They came from Africans. 4,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, people in the Nile Valley in Egypt were doing cataract surgery with metal instruments 4,000 years before it was ever heard of in Asia or Europe or the Americas. Think about that. If you haven't read the National Geographic magazine for April of 2018, get it and read it. And I have it here, but if I take it out from under this camera, it's going to go down and I'm going to be looking like I'm asleep. In that there's a map that shows you where we all came from in two waves. All those folks came from Africa, and managed to populate every landmass on the face of the earth without any modern technology. Do you realize how brilliant they must have been? Do you realize how creative they must have been? Do you realize how courageous they must have been? You realize how forward thinking they must have been? I think you don't realize because you have been led to believe that if you ain't white, you ain't right. Get over it, people. You have to know that we didn't tell the truth about the inventions, the creations, the discoveries made by people of color, because then we couldn't make white males look as important and as smart and as wonderful as they are. People, educate your children. And if you have to, educate the educators. Go to the school and say, here is a book I expect every teacher to read. Get multiple copies of the National Geographic magazine for April of 2018. Take it to the school and contribute it to the school and say, I expect every instructor and every janitor and every administrator to read this magazine before school starts in August. Because teachers, educators don't have the right to be uneducated. And be careful of words like white privilege. Now, I don't know whether you've read Peggy McIntosh's list of white privileges, but if you haven't, Google that while I'm talking. Google white privilege and look and see how those statements are made. She says, I can stand up in front of, and she wrote these in 1987. She says, every sentence says, or they used to, now she's trying to fix them. It says, every sentence says, I can stand up and give my opinion at a meeting and not be judged because of my race. I can buy a house if ever I want to and not be refused the purchase because of my race, because of my race, because of my race. And I thought, what in the, what, wait a minute. This is a college professor. Does she really think that there's more than one race? So I went to a white privileges conference and she stood up and read her first 24 white privileges. And I was watching the audience. And by the time she'd gotten to the first 10, the people of color in the group had begun to get a bit rested. By the time she'd gotten to 15, they started to leave. She got to number 24 and she said, I have discovered 14 more privileges that I have because of my race. And I looked around and all the black folks had left. And I thought, well, Jane, all the smart people have left. Why the hell are you still here? And I got up and I walked out. I was absolutely furious. People, she doesn't have those privileges. Number one, they aren't privileges. She's got the wrong name on that paper. Number two, we aren't white. They should have been called melanemic unearned advantages, because that's what we have. We have unearned advantages because of the lack of melanin in our skin. Does that make sense to you? No, it doesn't make sense to anyone, but she stood there and read that, and she has made a whole lot of money off that white privilege paper. And everywhere I go, somebody starts to talk to me about white privilege for about 2 minutes. And then they realized you shouldn't have said white privileges to this bitch. And I know that what many people who are listening to me right now are saying, listen to this bitch. That's all right. I used to be offended by that. I'm not anymore. Bitch is an acronym for being in total control, honey. Men, the next time you start to use that word to describe a woman in your presence, you need to know that she is in control, and you recognize that she's in control, and she's liable to say to you, you're out of control, aren't you, darling? But I can take care of that for you. And she's liable to reach into her pocket and pull out her little Lorena Bobbitt fruit knife. Now, it's time for us to stop using the B word to refer to women. Let's stop using the B word. And you will, once some woman says to you, you're out of control, aren't you, darling? But I can take care of that for you. And then you'll know never to use that word for that woman again. It is. There's a lot of power in that word, and you use it to shut us up. You can't do it to a woman who has listened to me, because you'll say, I know just what you're thinking. And now let me show you what I'm thinking. And then you'll wish you hadn't said it. It's time to change your language, people. Words are the most powerful weapon devised by humankind. We use words to destroy people all day, every day. And Mr. T. Rump knows that if you repeat something 4 times and people hear it 4 times, they'll begin to believe it. And then they'll repeat it 4 times, and the people they're talking to will begin to believe it. And that's exactly what he has been doing for the last 4 years. And for the last 6 months, he has been using that talent in an extremely unfortunate way. And you need to realize that that's what's going on. Now, the rest of us have to tell the truth as loudly as he is telling the lie. We have to repeat the truth over and over and over again.
Tell the truth as loudly as they are telling the lie.
Right. We have to out megaphone him. We have to be louder at our message than he is at his. And there are enough of us, hey, those of us who believe sort of the way I do, won the election. If we can do that at an election, then we have to spend as many days the rest of the year doing the same thing to put a stop to this lie. And it is a lie. You know it's a lie. I know it's a lie. He knows it's a lie. That's why he's so upset. He knows it's a lie. He doesn't know
I would
what to do
also
about
say,
it.
you know what it is, Ms. Jane? I also believe, so one, in regards to the charter schools and the empowerment schools and all that, I can tell you firsthand that I know exactly what you're speaking of based off of I was a dean of a high school. There was a lot of targeting that was happening to Black and brown children. And they even named them, yeah, those are Georgia's kids. And the list of Georgia's kids were Black and brown that they were trying to target for me as a dean to then start suspending them. I wasn't under my tutelage, under my time watch, wasn't going to happen. So, you know, I did get removed off of the fact that I did not allow the altering and changing of lives in a negative way. And I became, a definite target myself. So I definitely do. And there was a lot of money that was being brought in, especially when, for the most part, a lot of people don't know, but when you're bringing in special education children or students of special education categories, there's money that's being brought in. And as you're bringing in this money, you're now releasing this kid through, or this person through suspension or through expulsion, whatever it is. What you're doing is you're bringing the money, keeping the money, and getting rid of the student. It's a disgusting situation.
But first, you are encouraging the children, the teachers at the first, second, and third grade level to label those kids so that you can get those Title I funds. And I have
there you go.
You get more Title I funds if you have more children who are disabled learners. That's a bunch of who shot John, because those kids aren't disabled learners until someone labels them. And we've got to stop that right now. If a teacher says, this child can't read, I automatically say to her, what you mean is you can't teach this child.
You can't teach them. Oh,
give me this child, and I'll teach this child to read. And then I'll put him in the next grade, up to the fourth grade level, and he'll be reading. And the fourth grade teacher will say, well, there's a huge growth spurt between second and fourth grade. That's the reason Mrs. Elliott was successful. And I think, here, choose one, fool. I know how to teach the dyslexic child to read because I took a course in how to train the dyslexic child. And if every teacher were required to take that course, you would not have a whole bunch of people in Title I. You would not have a whole bunch of little boys of all colors unable to read just because the principal says, well, I saw a teacher talk about this one day not too long ago. I gave the scores for our end of year school tests to the principal, and the principal looked at them and said, I'll score these tests. And he rescored them so that there was a greater number of people who didn't pass the test. So that guaranteed them people who were going to be in Title I the following year, so that they would still get that kind of money from the government for people who didn't have a problem until the principal said, I'll score these tests. You need to realize what's going on. You need to realize that in California, they look at the end of year test scores in either third or sixth grade to determine, to project how many prison cells they're going to need in the future. And I'm not lying about this. I wish I were lying.
Not at all. Not at all.
I wish I were making this up, but I'm not. This is what's going on in the public schools in this country today. And if you think it won't happen in charter schools, you need to know it's going to be worse, because they are not going to pay those teachers as much as they would get in the public school, and they're not going to get the same level of teachers that they get in the public school because of those low wages. You need to be very, very careful about charter schools. And
Mrs. Elliott, without saying too much, I'll say this. I was more so concerned with the intelligence and the education of the educators than I was with those of the students. I had a teacher who, for the most part, I'm not going to get into no names, but I had a teacher teaching a subject matter in which she referred to the black insects that caused the Black Plague as gnats. And then gnats. So when a young student by the age of, at the time, 14, 15, had corrected, wait a minute, what is gnats? They said, well, it's the black insects that fly around. They're very small. She said, a gnat? She's like, no, they're pronounced ganets. So this is an educator educating or miseducating a young mind to then off.
This is not funny. This is not funny. Do you
I'm sorry for laughing.
This is not funny.
No,
Do
it's
not laugh
yes.
at that.
It's ugly. It's ugly.
Oh my God. I could give you 400 examples of that. I used to go through the hall thinking this isn't happening. I'm not seeing this. I didn't see that teacher do that. And I did see that teacher. Oh my, let's get on to something else.
It's scary. It's scary. So I say that to say, for the most part, right? Do you
look? You can't pay a good teacher enough.
Right. Right. You definitely can't.
We pay weight teachers way too much. We pay bad teachers way too much. And this teachers union keeps those bad teachers employed.
Yes. Yes. The union is one of the strongest. I've seen so much.
It's a strong union. And when they first started, and I was there when they said, that's how old I am. I was one of the first ones to join the National Education Association, the Iowa State Education Association. Came in the second year I was teaching. I knew what it was like before the union came in, and I knew what it was like after the union came in. We were in better shape after the union, but now some unions have gotten so strong, and even in Riceville, they got strong enough that they were totally opposed to what I was doing, and tried to get me fired. Luckily, the administrators said, no, we're not going to fire her. We don't agree with everything she does, but she's doing the right thing. How can we fire her for doing the right thing? So that cut the ISCA, their legs out from under the ISCA. But they tried all the time I was there to get my job. I don't know why they wanted my job. They had to work really hard to teach elementary school. It isn't like teaching junior and senior high school. You have to work every hour that you're with those kids, and you're with them practically every hour. But at the junior and senior high school, I found out when I went to junior high, that I only had to work 3 periods a day. And I had the rest of the day free. So I went down to the principal's office and I said, look, either send me some kids in the afternoon or send me home and pay me half my wages because I'm working part-time. This doesn't make any sense. He said, well, are you serious? I said, I'm absolutely serious. Come to find out that the previous teacher had been perfectly happy there. She was sorry to retire at 65. I can see why she was. She only had to work half a day and got paid for a whole day. People, you have to realize that this is leading me to... Go on. Shut up, Jay.
This is leading me to my next question, which is that your sense of humor is amazing. Before we even started the episode, you were on here, right? And you went and drove like 6 or 7 miles to go to the next place with the internet connection. Before the green room, before the backstage thing even got through, I was dying. Like I was on the floor rolling. And I kill
people all the time. I kill people all the time. People run to get away from me.
And my thing is like,
if you don't develop a sense of humor, when 20% of your parents and your peers, 80% of your peers and 20% of the parents are calling you names that you would never have imagined anyone would use to refer to you, you have to find something funny in it. People of color are great comedians because they know they have to laugh in order to survive. Jewish people were like that when we first discovered there was such a thing. Jewish comedians were absolutely fantastic because they could turn it around on you and make something. If they hadn't been able to do that, they would have died of high blood pressure. I'm not going to have high blood pressure. I'm going to cause high blood pressure, and I do that on a daily basis.
I've noticed that a lot of conferences or events where like melanemic, as you say, people are learning the correct things to do to not say the wrong words. Sometimes they'll find a group of us melanaceous people laughing or like tears in our eyes at something that's not appropriate to laugh at. And they're getting so good at knowing how to say the right words and not be racist, so-called, that they'll like look at us with that, like, that shunning look. And they don't understand what you just said, which is that a lot of people are just learning these things. We are using humor and art and soul to deal with this on a regular basis. So our laughter in the midst of pain is like, it's not the accepted way that melanemic people are starting to catch up to. It's the way we thrive and live to be able to laugh in the midst of pain, which you so beautifully articulated. But I'm just wondering, could you talk a little bit more? Because I think that's not usually associated with intelligence in our schools, although all the most wise people and all the greatest experts that I know get this value. Could you talk a little bit more about the value of humor when you're really making change in life, when you're really a wise person? How often I think about my brothers Light and Round, this call, we have some of the deepest debates that I grow from. As a grown man, I'm still growing in our debates because they're able to be honest and we're able to laugh at each other and ourselves after. Can you please talk about that? Because there's not many people that I know who have humor that you do. And even those who do are professionals. You are dealing with like critical race theory and psychology, and you're funnier than a comedian. So please talk about that.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. Now you better take this seriously. Let's talk about critical race theory. All critical race theory is telling the truth. That's all it is. It's telling the truth about what we melanemic people have done in the country we call America, which is actually the United States of America. That's all it is. The people who are upset about it haven't read the information about it. All they have to do is Google critical race theory and read that great big long paper that's there, and it explains exactly what it's all about. After you read that, you can't possibly criticize critical race theory. If you do, you have no business being a critic. You should be an educator. You should go back to kindergarten and start all over and take the program over again. Oh God, here we go. If you get people really upset about something, and then you tell them you say something funny, and they break out laughing, and then half of them are already crying, and the other half are laughing, and then they start laughing and crying together because it never occurred to them that if you'd read the Garden of Eden story the way it was written, we wouldn't have this problem. We would know that we're all members of the same family. Somebody just wrote in here that said, yeah, we are animals. No, we are animals. That's the reason we don't come in black and white. We are not animals. We are human beings, and human beings do not come in black and white. Zebras come in black and white. Skunks come in black and white. T-Rump comes in, but he has orange hair, which means that he's Neanderthal. You need to remember that. We have been, now, look, some of my best friends are Neanderthal, so don't, I've got some really good friends, even relatives who are Neanderthal. But you have to remember that Homo sapiens, get the book Sapiens and read it. You will burst out laughing halfway, you'll read several paragraphs and then you'll start to laugh, because the way he describes what we have been doing because of our misunderstanding, because of our ignorance, is really quite amazing. People, it's just a scream. Think about this. Within 30 years, white people will be a numerical minority in the United States of America. Now, that's the way it is. Think about this. Only 15 to 18% of the population of the earth is classified as white. Did you know that? White people have been in the numerical minority on this earth ever since Adam and Eve. You need to realize that, and you need to understand that white people, melanemic people, haven't been abused, haven't been tortured, haven't been slain. We're the ones who have been doing the abusing and the torturing and the slaying. We aren't the ones who have been on the receiving end of it. You have to remember that, and you have to remember that people, at the rate the ozone layer, the hole in the ozone layer is getting larger. You need to know that more and more sunlight is being allowed to enter our environment. That means more and more sunlight is going to touch the skins of melanemic people. More and more melanemic people are going to die of melanoma, which is a skin cancer that you get from not having enough melanin in your skin. Now, for years, a lot of years, about 200 and some years, we have had laws in this country against miscegenation. You can't mix the races. People, there's only one race. So you don't need laws against miscegenation. However, when melanemic people find out that their sons, particularly, and their grandsons and their great-grandsons aren't going to live as long because they don't have enough melanin to protect their cells from the damaging rays of the sun, all of a sudden you're going to find a whole bunch of melanemic people running around to finding someone who is melanaceous or melanotic to mate with, male and female. It makes good sense, people. Nature is going to take care of this. Nature is going to solve this problem. And those proud boys, who will never be proud men, and those oath keepers, and I don't know what oath they took, and those KKK people, and that QAnon, they're going to find out that we don't have to replace them. The sun is going to replace them. The sun is going to take care of those fools. Maybe God means this to happen. I think she might mean that. She might mean that. I don't have to think of God as a male. I don't think God's an old white man with a long gray beard that looks like Charlton Heston playing Moses. I think God is energy, and I think we get energy from the sun, and I think energy will kill us if we don't do something about the amount of melanin in our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren's skin. I have one great-grandchild who is part Hispanic. I have a grandson who is married to a lovely, gorgeous black woman. I have two granddaughters who are part Saudi Arabian and part American, part Anglo-American people. I want to have a family that looks like the family of man, that looks like a pile of maggots. Now, I should have said that, but on the other hand, if white is right, then everybody should love maggots, right? I'd much rather see a firefly or a lightning bug. Got it?
Mm-hmm. So I got to ask you. There was a comment that was made.
I wanted to ask a question that ties into,
he's got the earphones on. He knows more than you do. Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead, King Ra.
No, well, it ties into the backlash of you said you've been called the B word, they came for your job. Can you tell us about the experience of fighting through the backlash, and does it continue? Has it got any better in in a sense?
No, it doesn't get any better. No, it doesn't get any better. I am going to be
So how do you handle it?
How do I laugh a lot, because if one teacher can upset 51 other teachers and ruin their day, you've got to admit that I've got terrific power. Think about that. And that's the way I feel about the number of blacks in this country compared to the number of so-called white people. Melanated people just get all upset if a melanaceous people moves into the neighborhood. And I think, well, silly fools, do you really think they're that powerful? And if you think they are, you better join them. Think of the things you could do with that kind of power with you. Get with those people who have that kind of power. It got really ridiculous. I felt sorry for the principal and the superintendent because of the nonsense that they had to take, because they wouldn't fire me. And when people, newspaper people and people who wrote books interviewed those two men, and they'd say, why, to Mr. J, they said, why didn't you fire her? He said, well, I could have fired her, but in my heart of hearts, I knew she was right. Why would I fire her for doing the right thing? Now, if you have intelligent administrators, good educators don't have to worry about it. If you have bad administrators, then good educators change schools. They don't have to stay there, and they don't stay there. I stayed there. I could still be teaching in Bryceville if I had chosen to, because I could teach every child to read. I know how to teach reading. And any educator who really wants to teach children to read needs to take a course in Orton, Slingerland phonics, and then teach those kids, every one of those kids, to read, so that in the future, we won't need as many prison cells, because every kid will learn how to read. If educators did their job right, we could close most of the prisons that are open today. I've talked to people in prisons, and there's a second movie that was made about, third movie that was made about this thing 10 years after those kids graduated from high school, the ones who were in the eye of the storm. They showed that film that was made that year, 10 years later. They showed that reunion film in a maximum security prison in upstate New York. And after it was over, the person who was showing it asked the people in the audience how they felt about what they saw. And this large black male said, if they'd been doing that when I was in school, I wouldn't be where I am today. And he's absolutely right.
Facts.
If educators hadn't been educated to believe that being less than white makes you less than right, if we could get rid of that idea in education systems, we could change this situation tomorrow. We could stop building prisons, and we could let people out. We could realize how unfair this whole thing has been. The man who did the black and white doll studies, Kenneth Clark, in the introduction to the book about that Bill Peters wrote about the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise, Kenneth Clark says, Jane Elliott's exercise proves that if we would teach people to empathize with one another, we could change the face of this nation today. And I think Kenneth Clark knew what he was talking about. He's the one who did the black and white doll studies. And he did them back in the 60s or 70s, and then he did them again in the 90s and proved the same things in those years that they proved 30 years before, because we're still doing the same things. We're still teaching little children to admire white and to throw away black, to want to be white. We still have little boys who are melanaceous and melanotic using bleach on their skins so that they can get lighter skin. We're still having that happen. That is inhumane. The way we're teaching is inhumane, or they wouldn't be doing those things, and we have to put a stop to it.
And you know, I gotta say, Ms. Jane, you said something that was so detrimental to education itself. Good educators remain when you have good administration, and those without the good administration end up going and leaving schools. And it's amazing to me that throughout my experiences, the experiences of great teachers that I've worked alongside, there always seems to be this political outrage against those who are really there for the proper missions. And I just want to say that I'm going to lead into my question, but I just want to say, look into the camera as I say, for all the great educators who are doing this for the right reasons, please continue to do so. Do not let your bad administration or your bad peers be the reason as to why you stop educating properly to those who need it most. So understand that the mission is really the minds that you're working with, not necessarily the comfort in which the environment that you work in. And sometimes we got to be that selfless. So I'll say that. My question to you.
Wait a minute.
Do you believe?
Wait a minute. Before you make that suggestion.
Yes.
Also suggest that those people develop another talent and another skill so that if they lose that job because the administrator is afraid of the community or afraid of the teachers and they have to move on rather than teach at the expected level in that community, be sure they have developed another skill, another ability, another way to make a living, because the chances are very good that if they're in some communities, they're going to get fired. You have to, if you're going to be creative, you better be creative enough to do several kinds of jobs, because you're probably going to lose that job as an educator if all the people in that system want to be called teachers instead of educators. Teachers dispense facts and figures and get kids ready for the end of year testing. Educators lead students out of ignorance. There is a huge difference between teachers and educators. I'm not a teacher, never was a teacher. I'm an educator.
I thank you so much for saying that. It's something that I've always wanted to, in one way or another, express. There's a big difference between teachers and educators. There's a big difference between leaders, proper born leaders, and titles. My question to you, in regards to the disparity, the hate, the racism that's taught, the inequalities, and so on and so forth, I got to get your opinion on this. Do you believe that that has all been created based off of fear of the people that are hated on, taught to be taught to be hated, taught to be? Do you believe that that's based off of fear?
No, I think it started with religion. It started with religion. Make no mistake about this. It began with religion, and it is being perpetuated with religion and the fear of hell. That's the fear that they have. And right now, when I do it, oh Lord, I did a thing in a university in Texas a year or so ago. And I said, well, every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the white race, please stand. So all these kids jumped up, so please. I said, now remain standing. Now every person who considers himself a member of the black race, please stand. They stand now. Brown race, yellow race, red race. Now, everybody's standing. Now, will every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the human race, please sit down. And there was an audible gasp, and then they all sat down, and then they looked at each other and started to talk about, what's this bitch talking about? And I knew what they were saying. I've been through before. And at that point, an older woman, not as old as I am, but probably 45, stood up and said, I just think I said, see, we're all members of the same race. Now you can get over it. And she said, I just think that if they get on top, and I knew who the they was that she was talking about, get even, if they get on top, they're going to want to get even with us. I said, that's your major fear, isn't it? If people of color, particularly blacks, get on top, they're going to want to do to you what you have done to them. Is that your fear? She said, yes, it is. I said, well, let's find out if you're right. So I said to this group, 1,500 students and teachers, I said, well, every person in this room, every black person in this room who wants to get even with all white folks, please stand. 3 young black males stood. The rest of them looked at him like, are you crazy? And I said to this woman, see, they don't want to get even with all of us. Are you more comfortable now? She said, well, yes, I think I am. I said, good, I'm glad you're comfortable. Now, let's be honest about this, shall we? Well, every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the black race, who wants to get even with one or two white people, please stand. They all leap to their feet, cheering and laughing and high-fiving one another. Yeah. It was absolutely beautiful. And this one goes, I said, now, are you still comfortable? She said, well, no, I'm not. Now, this is worse. I said, look, here's what you have to know. If you want to be treated fairly in the future, don't behave in such a way that you're one of the one or two they want to get even with. Can you understand that? She said, well, yes. I said to the group, can you understand that? And all the students cheered and high-fived one another again. Nobody had ever said to them publicly, look, fool, you're going to get what you're asking for. And you're asking for it because you're scared, because you know what you've been doing to other people so far. You don't have to be afraid if you treat people fairly. And another thing, I don't believe that you and I are equals. I will never be as tall as you are. I will never be as young as you are. I will never know what you know about racism. However, I demand equitable treatment under the law for all of us. I don't have to be tall or male or whatever. It's all right to be what I am. It's all right for you to be what you are and expect equitable treatment under the law in the United States of America. I want it, and I want it now. And if you can make it retroactive, I'll take it. However, I'm on Social Security because I'm supposed to be retired. Good Lord. I should have been retired 25 years ago. 25 years ago, I should have retired. Here I'm still working. It's ridiculous. And I'm working because people in this country melanemic people refuse to give up the idea of the rightness of whiteness.
Yeah, the rightness. And
they love to have somebody talk to them about macroaggressions and microaggressions and conscious whatever and conscious bias and unconscious bias. Because if you use a 3 or 4 or 5 syllable word, then it makes it all right to be ignorant. There's no way you can justify the ignorance that's going on in this country, particularly where the education system is concerned. We don't educate people in this country. We indoctrinate them. We teach them how to be good American citizens. We don't even teach them how to be good U.S. American citizens. We teach them how to be good American citizens. If you aren't familiar with the Peters projection map, and I don't have it with me, I do have it with me, but it's not here. It's at home. Get a picture in your mind of the map that you see on the wall every time you look at a map in school. You see that map, you see Greenland hanging down there like a great big right plumb in the middle of that map. Well, if you read the legend at the bottom of the map, it says, South America is 8 times larger than Greenland. And another map says, Africa is 14 times larger than Greenland. On that map, the equator is 2/3 of the way down the map. The equator does not divide that map into 2 equal portions, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Hemi means half. So the northern hemisphere is half of the map. The southern hemisphere is half of the map. On that map, the northern hemisphere is 2/3 of the map, and the southern hemisphere is 1/3 of the map. People, even the equator is in the wrong place. Do not send your child to school in a classroom in which they have the Mercator projection map on the wall. It is deliberately designed to make white folks feel good. Get rid of it. Oh dear, I'm running low on data with only 10% left to use for the next 20. I've got to get out of here. Oh dear, because I didn't bring it.
This was a blessing.
Well, I hope
James,
so.
I have a question.
Listen to me. Go get the Peters projection map.
Yes.
Do it, Google the Peters projection map. Send for copies of that map. Tell them that I told you to send for it. I don't get look, I'm not making money on this. I don't get paid for advertising that map. I get paid in total joy when I find out that people are using it who wouldn't have used it if they hadn't heard from me. Yes. I'm not selling maps. I'm giving you information. Okay, ready?
My last question to you. Yes. As time is running out on this podcast, but you came from being an individual bucking against the system because something needed to happen. And the probability that your message and people like you would be competing with doctrine and institutional was very low. But now we've got to a point with the internet, social media, YouTube, where many of your things, even things you've done years ago, are immortalized to a certain degree, right? There's ways probably they could erase it but it'd be harder and harder. So my question to you is how helpful is social media? How helpful is it for people to find alternative means in this day and age? Is it false to say that anyone with a computer and internet connection can now help change the doctrine? Or is there some truth to the fact that people like you giving away their content and sharing their content is helpful? And is it a problem for you that there are people who set up accounts saying Jane Elliott when they're not? Like, to what degree do people sharing your information, is that helpful?
Wait a minute, I don't have a lot of time. Think about this. Think about this. How long did it take Zuckerberg to take Trump off Twitter? Now you think about that. Social media is a two-edged sword. Make no mistake about that. The reason he got elected is because of social media. People gave him all kinds of airtime. Television gave him all kinds of airtime. He didn't have to spend money on his campaign because every time he opened that anal aperture, which he calls his mouth, they put it on television. You know they did, and I know they did. If we had not let him spend so much time on television, he wouldn't have been president for 4 years. And what he's doing right now, they finally have permanently taken his Twitter away from him. I don't Twitter and I don't tweet. Those are for the birds. And people should have realized that that's what's happening, and they should have refused to listen to that fool. Now he's got all these crazy people. I didn't raise any Proud Boys. I tried really hard to raise some wise men. My father raised wise men. And when somebody says to me, I'm one of the Proud Boys, I think, what the hell do you have to be proud of if you're still a boy at the age of 42? Now, don't tell me that you're a proud boy. All you are is somebody who hasn't developed a parental or even an adult ego state. You're still in your child ego state. And if you don't know anything about transactional analysis, get the book TA for Teens and read it. And you'll see pages in there that these are the things you say when you're in your child ego state. These are the things you say when you're in your parent ego state. These are the things you'll say when you're in your adult ego state. Donald Trump has never, as far as I know, made a statement out of an adult ego state. He is a case of arrested development. And so are those Proud Boys who are following him. You need to realize what's going on. Get a book, get TA for Teens, and see how badly we have been misled, and educators help that misleading to take place. You need to realize that, and you need to go to school and say these things have to be changed. Number one, we're going to celebrate Afro-American Day instead of Columbus Day because Africans discovered this country first, this continent first, and watch the administration squirm, and watch everybody in the community squirm, because we've got a legend and people call me a legend. People do not call me a legend, because when you separate that into two syllables, it's leg and end.
Like end.
Yeah, you know what's at the end of a leg, and you know what either end. Please do not call me a legend. Please.
I hope you do not. It's been thrown out already by certain guest members that are watching this. I hope you do not get offended by the word iconic. I will say that you are very iconic. I will also say, as I'm wearing this shirt, it says Voice of Truth, something that I thank you. There you go. So I very much go by that moniker, light skin, the Voice of Truth. There you go. There you go.
Racial prejudice is an emotional commitment to ignorance.
Oh, wow.
Racial prejudice is an emotional commitment to ignorance. People who don't want to hear what I say want to remain ignorant. That is self-imposed ignorance, and we need to recognize it. And when they express that, we need to say, you need to get some education, call me. And they'll call me every name they can lay their tongue to.
Mrs. Jane Elliott, I want to first and foremost give proper cadence and respect to, I know you got a little bit of time left, but Ish from That Is Not a Noun is the person that connected us. I want to thank him so much because honestly speaking, I came across your work as I put on the email back in about 99, 98, possibly 2000. I have been in awe. No, I was in college. I was. Thank you. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I was in college back then. That
was me.
I have been in awe.
10 years old.
Yeah, King Ra was 10. I have been in awe with your work and your bravery for that many amount of years. And then the chance just to be able to speak to you and get you on the podcast is by far a highlight of my life. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for the Sound Minds podcast wants to thank you for being able to coming on here and not holding one punch back, even right down to scolding us, even right down to, most importantly, re-educating us on so many things that we need to be re-educated on. And the thing with the dumb one. Yes.
Wait. There's one more thing you have to remember. The word race, meaning a special group of people, came out of France in 1580.
Wow.
Think about that. It came out of France in 1580. That's how short a time compared to time we have had the problem of race on the face of the earth. Think about that. Yeah, we could wipe it out if we chose to.
Yes, and the truth of the matter is that, as has been Trump, the very uneducated one, he has been nothing more than just a distraction. And as you said, a lot of this goes back to the distraction of religion itself. Something so holy and sacred has been the separation of so many for so long, based off of the politics of what the environment of the time.
And think about the power of religion. If you can take a man who has feet of bronze and kinky woolly hair and turn him into somebody with light skin, light hair, and light eyes, that's powerful. I tell you, religion is powerful. But
and you know what?
We're gonna be surprised when we get up there. If we go up there, it's gonna be funny.
Yeah,
it's gonna be that one instead of.
But it's the Jedi mind trick, right? Because if you say, "Hey, your oppressor looks the very same as your savior," now you stuck with the Jedi mind trick of believing that those that oppress us are also the savior. So I got to kneel down one way or another, and that's where I become enslaved to the doctrinated teachings that have been brainwashing us for so many years.
We have enough power to change the color and the shape of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Why in the world do we need that? Why do we need that? What is there in the melanemic psyche that says, I can't pray to someone who doesn't look like me? Think about that.
It's ego. Most times I've learned that people with big egos have very small minds. And for the most part, throughout life.
And other things.
I won't go into the other things, but yes.
We're talking about hands and arms and legs and feet. Okay.
Everything. Statues.
I'm going to go. I'm not out of energy, but the thing is, so thank you very much for having me.
We thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Our elder cousin. Your elder cousins is official.
Your elder cousin? You mean me, elder cousin, right?
Yes,
you are our constellation.
You and our
next time I have a family reunion, I'm inviting you. You better be there.
Okay. We'll be there.
All right,
cousin. I'm not, because stars fall. Don't call me a star.
Oh wow!
Don't ever do that. And they blow up. They explode. And they fall to earth. I don't want to do that. You can call me something else. And don't talk to me
shining. When you shine.
And don't talk to me about the Rainbow Coalition. No people come in violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. Do not allow somebody to lead you down that particular path. You got it?
Got you.
Thank you so much.
We're shining. We're shining. Wherever you are doing your thing and shining, we're all shining more because and remember, a constellation isn't one star. A constellation is a group.
Oh, do you think I'm a group?
Yeah.
Or a groupie. If I'm a group, you're a groupie. Oh, God help us.
Got him.
And she will. God help us.
Yes. I hope she does.
Good.
You have been a blessing.
Bless you, my child. I'll see
Good
you
night.
another time. Good night.
Have a good
Bless
one.
you, my child.
Wow.
Oh my God.
So listen, I'm gonna, for those of who still here, I gotta let y'all know straight off the bat. Mrs. Jane Elliott was beyond our expectations. Just the knowledge, the humor, just her being her. These are gems that are very much cannot be copied by anybody. She has brought forth, as I say, every episode is part of the building of a foundation. You guys, whoever has been here with us for this long, please share this out to everybody. Tell your friends to tell 10. We are live on Roku under Hip Hop United and under Podcast TV. If you have Roku TV, go download those two entities, right? And you'll be able to see each and every single episode from 4 all the way down to the first season to the 4th season. This 5th season right here, we're about to end this next week. We can't tell you how much this particular episode and every other episode has been dear to us. And this is why, because we're bringing on people that we need to listen to. Thank you, Ish, for setting this up, brother. I appreciate you. Go watch That Is Not a Noun. My brothers, if you got anything to say, man.
I would say, this was an episode that you have to watch back and literally take notes to make sure you go actually research it. You actually, go get the book she was literally suggesting. It just add all of this knowledge, to your knowledge. This was, I just sat back and listened. Like, if you just listen and then take in the knowledge, and I was like, man, there's a lot of things that I gotta go back and write it down and then go research it, because I gotta really look that up. I'm like, I didn't know that part. You know what I'm saying? It was something. So I know y'all felt the same way. So do your due diligence by rewinding this, watch it back, and take them notes and do the research.
And if at anything the knowledge was too deep or whatever it is, if this was an MC battle, all 3 of us got roasted. All of us got scolded and screamed on. And she was spitting bars. She was out there effortlessly just letting it go. You know what I mean? So, damn.
Yeah.
Great episode, my brothers.
And in the spirit of like hip hop, right? The way we do battles in hip hop, it's meant so that instead of destroying someone, you become closer with them. And I have to say, everything she said had me dying laughing. Dying laughing. And again, in that Black joy way, not in a way of laughing because it's weird or invalid, laughing because it's so true, and we're able to find, what's the point of intelligence? What's the point of truth if it doesn't reveal closeness, more unity, more brilliance, more having a better life? And everything she was saying, even though it was scolding to a degree, hard to hear for some people, I'm sure it was hilarious. And the outcome of it is just us loving each other more. Right? Yes. So she's the MC of the day. I'm gonna agree with Light. She got the battle, she got the tournament. Nobody's stepping to her and I'll just reiterate what I said to her on the podcast. She's funnier than most professional comedians off the cuff. And what that teaches me as an educator and someone who tries to figure things out in life is if you don't find a sense of humor, if you don't have multiple ways to look at a situation, you really don't have the right to tell anybody else anything about any subject, because there's so many ways to look at things, and there got to be a fun, humorous way to do it. Like she came up with the brown eye, blue eye exercise. There's always a way to make people feel things. And I struggle with that. As someone who talks, it just is a reminder for those of us who talk to make people experience.
The iconic genius that she is, she even, respectfully shut my brother self up and said, wait a minute, let me speak. So for her to have done that, man, to your point, Kai, I think that honestly speaking, just the mentality, that genius way to get a point across, and even at some point in time, even if you feel like a little discomfort based off of the information you're receiving, she says it with a smile and a joke so that you can sit there and be like, damn, let me absorb that. You know what I mean? So straight up, yeah, you're right.
Listen, and we got the season finale next week. You know what I'm saying?
Damn.
Of season 5.
Thank you for rocking with us.
Thank y'all for rocking. Continue to rock. Stay tuned. We got so much more to come, but just stay tuned. You know,
mind blowing.
Is there anything else I would like to, wrap it up for the family?
Yes. Kyle, you got something else to say? All I'll say to my piece, Roku. Go check out Roku. Again, Hip Hop United and Podcast TV. You're going to see that. You're also going to see Dad Is Not Announced going to be up there soon. There's a couple of other things. Sway is up there. Like there's Woo is up there. Like we going to be, you know, when you see their episodes, you see ours is going to be intertwined. Go check that out, y'all. Go tell everybody, man. Stop playing, man. Don't miss these gems no more, man. You're playing yourself. If all these seasons are, all 4 seasons are up on there ready. We're gonna be on audio. We're gonna be on Spotify soon and all that. But this right here, this 5th season, hit harder than a Mike Tyson hook. And I'm gonna tell y'all straight off the back, it's only gonna get better from here. Only gonna get better from here. So that's my piece.
Love y'all. Love y'all. Love everybody rocking with us. The last roast of the day was when she roasted our Salmon's gem bell. Like we was trying to show her love. Like that's a gem. She's like, just while you know, while I'm making this point, that bell in my ear. I was
Stop ringing that bell in my ear.
Gem bell?
She said, "Stop ringing that bell in my ear."
I learned a lot about teaching. I think the most effective teaching is where people, at least even if they don't get everything, which there's books we all got to read, there's things we got to replay, like my brother Ross said. But one thing we all got was a sense of humor and to laugh and to learn, and that we got more to learn. So that's a lesson to me as an educator. Hopefully a few others educators out there have got that lesson. Like leave people with something while they're learning that they can enjoy, that makes them want to come back and learn more. Thank you, Ms. Jane Elliott. Thank you, Thank you, Rob. Love y'all.
And if you stayed this long, hit that like button.
Please.
Hit that like button. Share.
One more point. My fault, brother. Yeah, one more point I want to make, man. She did this exercise at 35. She is now currently 87 years old and still able to make the impact that she was making right at that age. Where at 35, a lot of people sit there and be like, damn, I'm too old or I'm too young or whatever it is. 87 years old. This woman is a phenomenon. She is a phenom. And I say that not because she's a guest on the Sound Minds podcast. I say that because she has impacted and poked holes in so many. At the age of 87, you see it here. She's still doing it. Do not ever let age or the definition of time define your line as to where you need to be in life. There's so much time. Even if it's another year, it's another year where you have 365 days where you can impact somebody's life. Please keep that in mind, y'all.
With that being said, hit that like button, subscribe, follow the Sound Mind podcast. And we out on 1, 2, 3.
Sound Minds. Salute.